So, Stephen, you were the production sound mixer on A Star Is Born, which is also Bradley Cooper's directorial debut. Working with this first-time director who's been on a film set or two in his lifetime,
Mhm.
can you just talk a bit about what that experience was like working with him?
The experience working with Bradley it's a very familiar or familial feel to the environment where basically everybody becomes family working on the film together. He's very open to ideas. He definitely has a plan in mind and is interested in knowing, everybody's opinion, but also, kind of going through the phases and also making sure that, we get things on the fly. So there's no rehearsals on set. Cameras kind of roll without, there being a big announcement. So you just have to be prepared, kind of watching the video monitors to see when cameras rolling.
So this is a very ambitious film, sound-wise.
Yes.
I guess talk a bit about sort of the you're no stranger to musical films.
Mhm.
You are the sound mixer of La La Land as well. Can you just talk a bit about some of the challenges of mixing, being the on-set mixer for a movie like this?
Well, this movie was unique in that this was kind of the first time that a movie was, recorded in this way, in the sense that we recorded everything live on set, but we also had to make sure that the music wasn't played out loud so that the crowds and just general public wouldn't hear these songs a year and a half in advance. So we had to come up with a system that we basically could record their vocals, um, and have everybody play along, but also be able to record what that room might sound like, so that in post production they could take that information and make it sound as good as it sounded, in the theater, so that it felt like everything was live, not just the vocals.
Mhm.
So the challenges were we basically put out 61, or we recorded 61 tracks of audio. So it was a huge, monstrous. Normally on a film set you do 8 to 10, and on this one, it was 6 times that. So we spent a lot of time in pre-production, kind of making a plan of how to capture everything. That's crowd noises, room tones. The mapping the rooms audio wise to just make sure that we have the proper size and distance of each venue, so that later on in post production they could add that reverb and add that room sound, so it gives the audience the feeling that they're right there on set with them.
From an artistic standpoint, I mean, you mentioned wanting to put the audience right there is in the crowd. Was that the reasoning why why it was important to have all of this sound?
Yeah, I think on the artistic level, we wanted to match what the camera was doing. The camera was staying on stage with the actors the whole time, and I think it's a unique perspective that not a lot of people have, being able to be on stage at a rock concert. And so audio wise, we wanted to give that impression as well to the audience, so they felt like they were surrounded. So if the drums were behind you, it would feel like the drums were behind you. If the bass guitar was to your right and your electric guitar is to your left, you would kind of feel that in the theater. So being able to track everything that all the musicians did on set helped in post production to make sure that we delivered the accurate sound.
Right.
Yeah.
Can you talk a bit about how you contrast that with some of the quieter moments in the film?
Um, well, on the production side, our main goal is to record the production track to make sure that post production has what they need. And I think they did an excellent job. The re-recording mixers did an excellent job in deciding when those moments should be quiet. Like if you look at the opening of the film, it goes from Jack's character doing a very, very loud concert to being inundated by cameras, and then boom, the door shuts, the world becomes silent, and his tinnitus kicks in, and that's when he decides he needs a little bit more to drink and goes to a bar. So those are those moments to try to get the audience to feel Jack's loneliness in the fact that 1 minute you're a rock star on stage, the next minute you're in a quiet car, to yourself, to your own devices. So I think that was important, along with picture. When you have the flashing cameras and the bright sounds, all of a sudden you're in a darker car driving away, I think it's also important to emphasize that in the soundtrack, to really get the audience to feel that, because we all know what it's like to go from a very noisy spot to a very quiet spot, and if you don't portray that in the theater, then then you lose some of your audience.
Yeah, and this character has an added dimension to that too because of his tinnitus. So
Yes.
it's interesting to to see that contrast as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, and it's important for the audience to know how sad that is for that character. Even when he's doing his hearing test, the doctor's like, you need your in-ears, you need your in-ears. Okay, all right, great. Because we all have that level of we can do anything, especially when it comes to our own safety.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things, I spoke with the sound editor on this movie, and he talked about how each of these concerts has sort of a unique challenge in and of itself, because they all, they go from different venues and they all need to feel unique. So can you talk a bit about, how you helped contribute to making these concerts all sound unique?
Yeah, well, the nice thing, so Alan Murray is our sound editor, and him and his team, he had another gentleman that came and recorded some on-set Foley or on-set effects.
Right.
It was helpful to have them as a backup in the sense that, when we would record these concerts, we didn't project the sound. It wasn't this great loud concert that as the audience member you could listen to. So in the audience, he was able to record a lot of live cheering and vocal excitement from the crowd, and that adds to the film later on when you can when you put it in the movie and in the mix, you get that feeling. And so each venue did have a different feel. Some of them were gigantic venues, some of them were a little bit smaller and more intimate. So each venue contributed to a different sound. Her Le'Veon Rose is a drag bar that she sang at and walked around, and so you have a different vibe there than you would, the finale song where it's a very somber, empowering moment for her.
Right.
So each time we went into a venue and into a space, we kind of decided, where to put the mics, where to capture the background sounds, where to capture as much performance as possible, to turn it over to post-production so that they could really juice it up and give the audience a feel that they're there with them.
Right.
Yeah.
You mentioned recording the dialogue, and I think anybody who hasn't been on a film set might not understand how difficult that can be sometimes if you're not on a soundstage,
Right.
if you're out on locations and things like that. So can you just talk a bit about, was this one particularly difficult in some ways?
Sure. Every film has its challenges. This one was 100% on location, so we were never at a sound stage.
Oh, wow.
The house is in a right off of I think it's Mulholland Drive up in Thousand Oaks, and so yeah, each location has its difficulties. When you're in the bigger locations on stage, you have the cheering audiences. We never wanted to do the standard, okay, let's have the entire audience mime, pretend to make noise. We wanted it to feel like a real rock show. So when she shows up the first time at the side of the concert, right before before the song "The Shallow," we just let the crowd go, be excited, cheer, and so the actors had to speak up over that, which is a natural thing. He had to talk into her ear, she had to talk to him. So we tried to make that feel, as a sound department, we didn't want to interrupt the acting and what the background were doing, because it affects everything. As soon as the background becomes quiet and starts miming, so do the actors. And so we wanted it to give them the real feel that there was 10,000 people cheering, and so we just let everybody go for it, and it worked out. You watch the film and you feel like, sure enough, they're talking over the audience. So those are those challenges where on set, you're making this decision that may or may not work in post-production, and in this scenario it worked, and it's just a matter of knowing what does and what doesn't work in post, and so that was the challenges on this film. You can record dialogue in a house, that's fairly simple, but when you're doing it on the side of a stage after a concert, people are cheering, in between sets, things of that nature, it becomes more complex.
Right. Before I let you go, I did want to ask you, so you had another movie come out this year, The Mule, directed by Clint Eastwood, who I'm sure Mr. Cooper probably observed a couple of times.
He's also
he was in the
movie.
movie, yeah. So, can you just talk a bit about working on that film and what it was like working with Mr. Clint Eastwood?
Yeah, I mean, Clint, he is tougher than pretty much anybody on the crew. I mean, we were in Atlanta in the middle of summer, and it's 105 degrees, and he's just hanging out, and the whole crew's kind of falling off left and right from heat stroke, and he's kicking back, smiling, and he's got a work ethic that I haven't ever seen. I mean, he's 88 years old, and anytime we're all about to complain, you just kind of swallow it, because if he's here, I'm here. But he's a great director, great to work with. We had a lot of fun on that movie. It was a long, hot summer, but just watching a legend work, it's inspiring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And lastly, I mentioned you worked on La La Land. That brought you an Oscar nomination. Can
Mhm.
you just talk a bit about what that recognition meant for you?
I think at the end of the day, it's that's a tough one. I think it definitely opens doors and helps you out. But this film, A Star Is Born, we definitely. I'm trying to think of the timeline. I think we got the job before. I believe we were hired on the job before the Oscars happened, but that was mutual producers that I'd worked with before. But I think it's important that your colleagues and people in the industry, recognize each other for all the hard work everybody does. I think everybody puts in 110%, at this level. And I think it's important that, we all get together, and whether you win or not, it's more or less just the fun of all getting together and meeting people that you typically don't run into. I've talked to Alan and Dean and those guys more now than I have, before that. And so it's a fun experience to be a part of with everybody involved.
Well, you're right back in the thick of it again with this one. Thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on the movie.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You too.
Thank you.